Hey everyone, it's John Krask with EveryLibrary, the EveryLibrary Institute. Constitution Day 2025. We're wrapping up today with a very important conversation to me, personally, professionally. Dr. Colleen Shogan, the former Archivist of the United States and now Senior Policy Director at, Senior Advisor at the organization More Perfect. Nobody owns the Constitution. That's the whole thesis of all of our conversations today here at EveryLibrary and EveryLibrary Live for Constitution Day. Nobody owns it, but we are all responsible to it. Except at one point, our guest today, Dr. Colleen Shogan, you didn't own it, Colleen, but you sure were the custodian of it.
That's right. Custodian or protector, yes.
That's right. So I'm really thrilled to be able to have this chat with you today. We watched from afar as your tenure there evolved across a couple different administrations. The opportunity to have this chat today is, like I said, it's important to me. And I want to hear from you about what it's like to have been that custodian. You were the first woman who was appointed to the role of the Archivist of the United States. What did that mean to you personally? And what did you see as the core constitutional responsibility of the National Archives and Records Administration?
Well, thanks so much for having me. I mean, I think, being the first woman, it was a tremendous honor. And what I always said was I might have been the first woman, but I will not be the last woman to occupy that role or position. I think what it meant was for a lot of people who work in the field of libraries and archives, a very high percentage are women. I looked it up just to prepare. About 70% of archivists are women in the United States, and about 80% roughly of librarians in the United States are women. So it is a field dominated numerically by women. But until recently, within the past, I would say, decade, there hasn't been that many women who have run major libraries or archives, and certainly not at the national level. So when I would go various places and travel around, and I would meet archivists and talk to people coming up in the field, a vast majority of them that would come to talk to me were women, and they would say to me, this means so much to me to see a woman leading the National Archives, because it's a source of inspiration for me in my own career, and makes me think that there's not any limits for what I can do if I work hard in this profession. And that always made me feel really good. Just to stand as a role model and to be able to break that glass ceiling was very, very important for the profession, I think.
I agree. Yeah, it's interesting because I know a lot of archivists. We spend a lot of time working with the Society for American Archivists, the Council of State Archivists over here at EveryLibrary, and they use a term called it's the lone arranger, or it's the solo archivist. But you had a heck of a team there at NARA. I mean, you certainly were not the only one in that space. I mean, those core constitutional responsibilities that, preserving and protecting those foundational documents, you had a heck of a team.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know exactly how many people are working at NARA these days, but we had close to 3,000 people across the United States working at 40-some locations to preserve our nation's records. But remember that in addition to the very important founding documents that we preserve, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, there was about 13.5 billion pages of records at the National Archives. So it is by far the largest public archive in the world. So it's a very big job. There's a lot of people, but it's a huge responsibility.
When I chat with people about libraries and we talk about the Constitution, the cocktail party conversation always comes around to the idea that, or the fact that Library of Congress and the National Archives, neither of them are in the Constitution, and yet there's a core constitutional function that both of those institutions conduct. And the preservation of documents is one thing, but the living memory is another, I think. You've spoken a lot about the importance of asking whose history is preserved and whose history is told. And I think that that's a vital question for archives, especially right now.
Absolutely. It's very important, I think, that all Americans can see themselves, can see their stories at these institutions, whether it's the National Archives, the Library of Congress, or the Smithsonian. They're collectively usually the three institutions that are viewed as responsible for safeguarding and sharing our nation's history. And it's one of the reasons why these institutions have been characterized and have remained nonpartisan in nature. Some people, well, why can't there be someone who's supremely political that runs the National Archives or the Library of Congress or whatnot? And the reason why that has not been the case previously is because you want all Americans to feel welcome at these institutions, because all Americans have to be believe that their history is being accounted for. Mm-hmm. And if you start to engage in either partisan politics or just politics in general, then you're going to start to chip away at that universal trust that those institutions really thrive on to make them able to do their mission. And so I think that's of critical importance going forward.
Well, the debate about whose history is it, the difference between saying something is appropriate or inappropriate that drives a lot of the censorship conversations, but then there's this anti-institutional approach to things right now in certain sectors of civil society. There is a real role, I think, for archives and for libraries and for museums to strengthen civic trust. And civic trust right now seems really fragile to me.
There's no doubt it is. And the reason why a place like the National Archives is so important, I think there's two main reasons. First, and we've been talking about this, is the importance of preserving and sharing history so that everybody can learn from the past to inform the future. But the second reason, which is really I guess you could say is a specific component of the first one, is accountability. And accountability has to do with, is a necessary ingredient in a democracy. If, baked into the Constitution. So you asked, the National Archives isn't in the Constitution, neither is any of these other institutions. But what is in the Constitution for sure, and of course, the Federalist is replete with references about accountability. Mm-hmm. Accountability from the branches of government to the people, and accountability actually even between the branches of government. And the only way you can have accountability in a democracy is if there is a preservation and a sharing and access to the records that record the decisions that enable the democracy to function. So that accountability is incredibly important, and I would say that's endemic throughout our governing documents, particularly the Constitution.
Well, the trivia piece is it's the post office, it's a patent and trademark. Those are the elements that are actually named in the Constitution. Mm-hmm. And I think about the debate sometimes over the post office about how, they're not making money. Therefore, no, they're delivering a core service that's fundamental to the backbone of America. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to ask your advice for mm-hmm. librarians and for archivists, for museum professionals who are working under some political pressure, because there's a tremendous amount of political pressure out there right now, whether it's at a local level or there's certain states that have decided that they're going to go their own way about how, and then federally as well, we've got some significant political pressures coming on these professions. What advice can you give to folks who want to remain true to their institutional mission, their own moral compass around access, around preservation?
Yes, I would say that when there is pressure, your professional standards are going to be very important. And those would probably be provided to you by, for example, the Society for American Archivists or the American Library Association. But those professional standards are something that you can point to whenever you make decisions. And those decisions, if they would be questioned, that would be something that you could certainly appeal to. The second thing I would say is, in as much as every institution, whether you're at the national level, the state level, or local level, you have to have documents that explain your policies and procedures. And I would take the opportunity to look at those documents and make sure that they are up to standard, to make sure that those policies and procedures are clear, because that again is something that you can point to and appeal to if someone questions a decision or choice that has been made. And then the last thing I would say, and we were doing this work at the National Archives, and I've heard a lot from government archivists in particular about this recently, is that you have to do outreach into your community and to develop allies in your community, because when some of these things are questioned, decisions or choices, you need to call upon people in your community that you can trust, that are your allies, that can also help defend you in the public sphere. So those are three really practical steps that I would take if I was working in archive or a library at any level in the United States today.
Yeah, I think that there is something that's very powerful about the local policy, the institutional policy framework, and it's underappreciated, I think, by civilians, because you don't come up with these policies capriciously. You rely on your professional ethical frameworks, professional training, consensus building, and the idea that we are a nation that is ruled by fairness, at least I hope, and those policies are about transparent and open access. It's about preservation and the systems of preservation. It's also about confidentiality, though, as well. I mean, the archives, the National Archives holds a lot of material that is not necessarily immediately public, and that's true for archives in government and local government all around the country, if not around the world. Without placing yourself into a space where policy is respected, it's the erosion of the integrity of the profession is very steep.
That's right, and you have to count upon that integrity of the profession when you're in situations. I mean, not every situation is going to have, you're not going to have a flow chart, right? That's going to tell you when this happens, then do that. When this happens, do that. So things have to be interpreted and applied. So you have to be able to use your judgment and discretion. But once again, I think that if the principles of the profession and those standards are clear and behind you, then you're starting out at least on a very, very solid footing to go forward.
So the America 250th is coming up, the Semiquincentennial.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into a discussion around that, I just need to come back around to the idea that there's 13 however many million?
13.5 billion.
Thank you. 13 point across 40-something facilities.
Right.
Colleen, where was your office? Was it in downtown DC?
It was. My main office, where I worked out of most days, was in Washington, D.C., in the archives building that houses the founding documents that most people are familiar with.
Yeah.
But I also had an office in College Park, Maryland, which was our largest facility. Mm-hmm. And I tried to spend one day out there at least every 2 weeks because there were so many staff that worked out there. It was really was important for me to spend time there as well.
Yeah. Did you have time to wander the buildings? Did
No.
you get a chance? No.
I never. No, actually, not really in any of the buildings, except in Washington, D.C., because I would get in early in the morning, oftentimes a lot earlier than other people. So I would take advantage of that time in the morning. At 8 o'clock is when the founding documents actually appear in their cases in the morning, and there's a time frame between 8 o'clock in the morning and 10 o'clock when we open to the public. So I would usually take advantage of that time and go and see the documents myself almost every morning when I was working in the Washington, D.C. location. And I always felt like that was a really great way to start my day.
That's an amazing story, and thank you for sharing that with me, because I wasn't fishing for it. We didn't talk about that, but I was wondering, because there are moments where, I mean, I've toured a few archives. The one I think about, of course, I've been to that room in the National Archives. I brought my children. We stood in line. We spent the time. We let people cut behind us because we were going to spend the time, But I also remember going to the archives at the State Library of Florida, which is both a library and an archive. And they had some of the ballots from Bush v. Gore left. They had some in the box. And I got to I put on a glove in this case, and I got to hold one of the ballots and do the hanging Chad thing. I mean, like getting close to those real items. Yeah, the America 250 should be about us getting close to our real items, the reality of it all. It's less than a year away. how do you see the America 250th as that opportunity for re-engagement with the materials, historical reflection, civic engagement?
I really hope that we use this opportunity in 2026. There's the phrase that appears on the outside of the National Archives, "the past is prologue," really tells us we need to know our past so that we can inform our decisions and choices for today, but also for the future. So that's what I'm really focused on these days, is working on a new history-based civics project. It's called In Pursuit, and it's debuting on Constitution Day. Very excited about that. Looking for new and creative ways that we can bring as much American history to as many Americans as possible. We would hope that people could visit and engage with history, as you said, in person. We know that not everybody can visit Washington, D.C. to be able to do that and engage with some of these documents. And of course, the presidential libraries are all across the United States. So we have to find other creative ways in which Americans can engage with their history. And I think that history has become a little bit, and we know this because we've watched the news, history has become a little bit of a third rail in politics today. And we can't let that happen, because we can't just avoid talking about history because there's disagreement about history. This is our shared history. It doesn't mean we have to agree upon everything in American history, but it does mean that we have a responsibility to engage with that past so we can learn about it and we can move forward.
I agree. The question again of whose history, whose library, whose archive is so salient. So, well, now you're a senior advisor at the organization More Perfect, and you're working on those new civic initiatives. Can you mention about More Perfect's mission to our listeners and watchers?
Sure. More Perfect is an alliance of organizations all across the United States that are interested in strengthening democracy. And we have 5 very distinct democracy goals, things like increasing civic participation and civic awareness, which is what I'm working on, but also increasing volunteerism across the United States, and of course, engaging in productive discourse and dialogue that doesn't divide us. So we have 5 democracy goals, and we have partners all across the United States, including our presidential foundations, presidential library foundations, things like the National Constitution Center, the National Archives Foundation, that work with us in order to do that.
So we're broadcasting this interview, full disclosure team, it's 9 p.m. Eastern when we started this today, Constitution Day, but it's also 2 days ago when we recorded this. So the reason that we're holding it until 9 p.m. is because, Colleen, you've got some big announcements that you made today with More Perfect and your partners. I'm dying to share a little bit more about it. I got an early preview here for the EveryLibrary community.
I think it's a great initiative for 2026. The name of the initiative is called In Pursuit, and you can find us online, inpursuit.org. And what we are doing is collecting short essays about all of our American presidents and select first ladies. And we've gone to some of our nation's most prominent public leaders, our most prominent historians and journalists and other thought leaders to write these short essays. And each essay is not going to be biographical in nature, but instead we're asking every essayist to come up with one lesson that we can learn from this person's leadership. And we've got some great pairings. President Bush is going to lead us off with the project with an essay on George Washington. President Obama's writing the essay on Abraham Lincoln. President Clinton on Teddy Roosevelt. We have former first ladies that are writing on other former first ladies. Chief Justice Roberts on William Howard Taft. Great historians, Pulitzer Prize winning historians, Annette Gordon Reed, and then popular historians like John Meacham. It's going to be a terrific extravaganza for people who like reading about American history. And the best part of it is it's accessible to everyone. It's free to everyone. We're going to be powered by Substack, but it's also nonpartisan in nature. We're not engaging in any ideological interpretations of history. We're providing one lesson and then asking Americans to think about that lesson and engage with it.
A buddy of mine and I, when we were thinking about, do we go on the big tour of baseball, stadiums, and we realized we don't really care. And then we're like, oh, maybe we should go to national parks. And we're like, that's too many. We have to bring our wives. Where could we go? And we said, we'll bring our kids and we'll go to all the presidential libraries.
There you go.
Yeah.
I went to all the NARA presidential libraries. I toured all of them as Archivist of the United States. I went to each and every one of them and spent days there, met with the staff, saw the top records, in some cases did public events, toured the museums, of course, and they're all fantastic. I cannot recommend it enough for you to see all of those presidential libraries.
Yeah, and we did all right. We didn't do great on our tour, but my retirement someday,
there you go.
I'll make sure to do the full swing. But the learning, the reflection, the opportunity to see America at that moment, whether I was in agreement with the guy or not, was fascinating. And the burden of office, but also the interpretation of the Constitution that happens.
Right. And like it or not, I know people like to look at history in a lot of different ways, and that's completely appropriate. But for many Americans, presidents and first ladies are a really accessible lens which to learn about American history. I always say, like, the Reagan Library in Simi Valley, California, is, of course, Reagan served 2 terms, but it's really a museum about American history in the 1980s. And it's using the lens of Ronald Reagan in which to do that, but you're really learning about an entire era of American history. And all of the presidential libraries do that to a certain extent. Yes, I can't recommend it enough. And I think that's a terrific way, a terrific ambition for 2026 and beyond to visit all of them.
Yeah, so the project, though, releases today, Constitution Day.
Does, on Constitution Day, yes, absolutely.
And folks can get it online anytime, ready to roll.
Online, on the website, and like I said, we're going to be powered by Substack, and the essays are going to start to release on President's Day 2026. They will release weekly in chronological order all the way through December of 2026.
Well, that'll be fascinating. That will be absolutely the chronological order part of it. I'm going to subscribe. I'm looking forward to seeing that come out. It's fantastic. Okay, Colleen, Dr. Shogan, thank you very much for this. I want to close our Constitution Day here at EveryLibrary and for EveryLibrary Live with just a moment of reflection on your part. I mean, you've been in very interesting places in Washington, D.C. Your time as a historian at the White House, or of the White House, your time at National Archives now at More Perfect. I mean, what's your hope? What's your hope for Americans to dial in and listen in this lead up to the 250th?
I think that I'm an optimist. I get asked this question a lot. I am betting on American democracy. I'm betting on the next 250 years. And what I really hope Americans do in 2026 is to take some time to reflect, of course, into our history so that we can go forward, but also to reflect on some of the principles, not so much that divide us, but the principles that actually unite us. We can have disagreement. Disagreement is good in a democracy. Disagreement can be productive if we do that in a way that is civil and respectful and rational. So I really hope that we can hit almost a reset button in 2026. This will be our occasion and reason for doing it, so we can move forward for the next 250 years of American history.
I think that's very well put. So,
thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Colleen Shogan, EveryLibrary Live, Constitution Day 2025. We always end with a little wave to the camera. I put up a little card again. Thank you.
Your local library. I'm a big fan of local libraries.
Oh, I know. We'll have you out sometime. We'll see you soon. I'm going to put the card here, and I'm going to hit end, and I'll see you in the green room.